Hello, everyone, and welcome to Economy of Trust show. My guest today is going to talk about one of the most important products needed for Ukraine in order to rebuild the country after the war. We're talking about political insurance coverage. We're talking about risk coverage of transactions, and John Strayhorn knows a lot about it. And please enjoy the show. Please support us. Please share the show, and we'll see you soon. John, it's welcome to Economy of Trust show. Great to see you, and hello.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm doing great, and thank you. Thank you very much for giving time. John, obviously, we're going to be discussing a lot of Ukraine and your expertise related to Ukraine. But before we dive in there, I want you to give a little summary of your expertise, what you have done for the last 30 years, so to speak, and at the same time, then we're going to move towards how that can be applied to Ukraine. Please.
Sure. Well, thank you, first of all, for allowing me to talk with you today. And so let me just dive into it. So I really started my international career back in 1990. I worked for 11 years as an international banker with 3 regional banks here in the United States and 1 transnational bank as well. And then I did a short stint with the North Carolina Department of Agriculture, working in their international trade marketing arena, whereby I would travel to East Asia primarily, and I was the regional manager for that area because I have some Mandarin speaking skills, which I obtained when I was studying over in mainland China back in the mid '80s. So then once I was done with banking, international banking, I started my own company, Global Insurance Services, LLC in Baltimore, and started that back in 2001. So I've been a domestic USA as well as export credit insurance broker ever since then. And essentially what I do is insure U.S. receivables against non-payment for commercial and political reasons. And the political reasons now represent the lion's share of my business. And that's how I segued into involvement with the with Ukraine. So back in 2017, started to get involved with helping Ukraine store their nuclear waste at the Chernobyl exclusion zone, and had been the political risk insurance broker for the transaction to store that waste for 100 years. So and as you can well imagine, I was quite nervous when the Russian troops were in the zone, and we were all concerned that they were going to damage the project. So. And
it's not only that; it's also Zaporozhye, obviously nuclear station, Zaporozhye, and others are also under threat. And anyway, today is not about the war, as difficult as it is to hear the news every day. John, obviously one of the things we are doing here, and you and I are also members of Rebuild Ukraine Agency, and part of what we're doing, we are creating a foundation to what to do for rebuilding part of Ukraine when the war will be over. So I want to basically for you to emphasize how critical the financial instruments of risk management that you are providing for the financing of any type of development in the country like Ukraine.
At this point, really, political risk insurance, which I obtained through various venues, is critically important. Especially now, but even more so as we move forward and the shape of the war becomes more evident, because the rebuilding of Ukraine is absolutely necessary for the stability of Western Europe and frankly, for all the democracies around the world. So we in rebuilding Ukraine are really trying to set the groundwork, and setting that groundwork requires the application of political risk insurance. Without that, it's going to be very difficult for any investors or any companies to have any real confidence that they can step into the market and help Ukraine rebuild.
So let me break this down to, if I'm a mayor of a small city, Bucha, for example, right? Or if I'm a business owner of a factory, in order for me to attract the capital or strategic partner, more or less the funding sources will require us to carry this type of a policy on the project, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, what the policies do is they ensure the beneficiary or the insured that in the event that there's a problem, let's say missile strike or whatnot, the insurance will step in and respond and reimburse the insured. So that is coverage and insurance that can really make a big difference on the decision makers within companies as to whether or not they put their factory in Ukraine or outside of Ukraine. Naturally,
this is obviously Ukraine needs all help it can get to attract as many companies as possible to
Absolutely.
the create jobs. We lost almost 50% of GDP now by 4 months of the war, almost 4 months. So coming back to the next question, in relationship to variety of the products available, can you give a just understanding of this type of, let's call it insurance product? What type of transactions can fall under your prerogative in terms of expertise of where it should be applied?
Yeah, so if we're talking strictly political risk, factories that are being built in Ukraine can be insured. Again, ensuring against political risk, which could be, war or any other currency issues that may or may not occur in Ukraine as a result of the war. So, and then if you're talking about straight export credit insurance, I have customers that are selling electronic equipment, furniture, power grid equipment, software at substations.
All of that can be insured.
Excuse me?
All of it can be insured.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we basically are talking about insuring a transaction.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So, and this is obviously critically, which leads me to the next question. Great segue. Ukraine's image tremendously changed at the enormous cost of the war. Today, Ukraine is a leader of freedom, fighting for democracy. But in order to sustain that, there has to be a trust, right? So there has to be a trust developed. And that trust requires transparency. One of the things you discussed in the questions prior to this is we need to set up certain standards that are accepted in America or Europe, where Ukrainian companies can actually follow them in order to make it easier to acquire those tools. Please speak to it.
Yeah, so the biggest issues that I've run in the past with getting coverage for Ukrainian companies is the reliability of financial statements. That has been the biggest single issue that we've run into, and that's a trust issue. And how do you address that? Well, one way, and it's not particularly easy for Ukrainian companies to do this, but we all understand that, is to adhere to either USA GAAP accounting standards or the European model, which is the IFRS. And if you have either of those standards applied to the financial statements that are submitted, it makes it much easier to get projects approved through, either private credit insurance market or the U.S. government insurance market, be it the Export-Import Bank or USDFC, which is the International Development Finance Corporation here in Washington, D.C. So those two standards would really help the Ukrainian businesses
So
tremendously.
basically, as we're launching this new initiative, new kind of phase of Ukraine, we want to bring them at the ground level and build, starting with those as a fundamental blocks of standards that we would require in order for anybody to work with us. It must be implemented.
Correct.
Correct. So
Correct.
now, that being said, obviously, insurance market in Ukraine is a very weak market, undeveloped market. You work with many global players around the world in insurance market. How big of an interest Ukraine as a whole, as a market, can be for those big guys?
I think the potential is very, very large. Currently, everybody's sitting in, well, I should not say everyone, but and primarily the private credit insurance market is waiting to see what the outcome of this conflict is going to be. So, let's be honest. I mean, this is a difficult situation
It is.
for Ukraine. It's a difficult situation for the private market to ascertain. Is this a risk that they want to take on? Everyone's behind Ukraine in the markets. It's just that they are having a hard time justifying it internally as
and this is John, and this is where Ukraine must come to play, because Ukraine have to sell itself to those players. Ukraine have to demonstrate, as you pointed out, everybody wants it, but everybody's sitting on the fence. And
Right.
if we can demonstrate through Rebuild Ukraine Agency, if we can demonstrate that we have a platform that can implement those changes that are looking in order to make their risk assessment better, then those players would be in the market, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And part of it, this is excellent. And one of the things we need to do is obviously to bring those players to have local players in the insurance market that can work with international players. Would that be the best way to approach big guys entering the market?
Yeah, my understanding is a fair number of the private underwriters had offices in and around Ukraine. Poland, Slovakia, Hungary,
Yeah.
Romania. My understanding is that they vacated the Ukrainian market physically as best they could. Obviously, the Ukrainian nationals that were males had to stay, but nonetheless, they exited the market, and so we are where we are at this point.
Correct. So let's talk about, before we, again, thank you for your time. Obviously, let's talk about this, what you do in relationship with small and medium-sized business in Ukraine. What can be offered to small guys in terms of to protect their transactions? I want to sell, I don't know, $2,000 worth of, I don't know, product or those pens, and I want it to be protected. Is there kind of insurance policy small business can buy?
Well, so from where I stand, the companies that I work with are primarily U.S. companies that are supporting Ukrainian businesses, either with equipment, maybe some legal work, and what have you. So I'm really ensuring their transactions against non-payment, and which allows them as exporters to offer better terms to the Ukrainian buyers. So normally, without the insurance, the transactions would require cash in advance.
Correct, and that's the big problem.
Prior to the war, you could get a letter of credit, but now that's not going to happen.
Right, but even the letter of credit does not work for a small business because they don't know how to use it. So the key is, if there is a, as you and I have brainstormed a little bit, if there is a product that my small business can pay, I don't know, $100 a month, but everybody who I'm working with will know there's insurance coverage for every transaction I do. And obviously, just that would be great. And obviously, I really hope that you and I can work on that, because I think that's going to be fundamental change for liquidity in a small and medium-sized business of Ukraine.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, with the insurance that the U.S. exporter can provide, open account terms, 30, 60, 90 days, up to 360-day terms, which greatly relieves the financial stress for the Ukrainian buyer. Right?
Absolutely, and this is critical because this leads me to my last question of the interview. It's
Yep.
all about working capital for Ukrainian companies,
Right.
and what we just discussed, giving them a 60, 90, 360 days grace period, is phenomenal boost for the economy because it's just a tremendous boost. So you saw the program we started after the war started with the students of Ukraine about helping working
Yeah.
capital of small businesses. I want you to speak about that idea in itself and how critical it is now to people around the world to support the small businesses of the country that give the services for free to the people on the ground.
Yeah, I as I was reading through that, I thought it was very innovative, very flexible, and very targeted program. So I thought it was very interesting how that works, and I think it really serves two purposes. It supports those companies that have survived this initial conflict, which shows that there's a stronger company and stronger management, and also through the working capital program that you provide. It also shows that they can manage working capital in a stressed
They're building that
environment.
history on the standards we forced them upon them.
Yeah. So that goes a long way. So they've covered two pretty high hurdles that, if, for instance, I go and they come to me and they want to get terms from a supplier in the States, I can cite that in the write-up when I make my presentation to the underwriters, be they private or government underwriters via
I
the
haven't thought about
Export-Import.
it, but yes, that's great. Yes, I haven't thought about that. That's a great idea. Yeah. Well, John, thank you so much for your time. This has been very good. I really appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
really hope that everything you and I talked about will be brought to Ukraine because this instrument is critical for liquidity of reconstruction of the country. Thank you, John, for your time.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you, everybody. Please support us, promote the show, share the show.